My name is Mark, and yes, cancer sucks. Life doesn't have to. This is my story. Okay, enough of being Debbie Downer. Let's do a fun story. This is the story of Chinese New Year. So my freshman year of college, I was rooming with a couple guys from high school, and the plan was we would have 4 of us total, so 3 other guys I knew, but one of them at the last second decided to go to a different school. And in his place, I had an exchange student from Shanghai as our 4th roommate. And you could kind of tell that his first couple of weeks, he was trying to get used to the culture of everything, still learning phrases and everything. So eventually, we get to my second semester while I was there during my freshman year. And the normal routine on a Sunday morning when I was being responsible and everything was, I'd wake up for church, get ready, go out, make myself some breakfast, kind of get ready for the day and go on. Because sadly in my apartment I was the only one that would, wake up or in my dorm to wake up and go to church. That's just the way it was. But anyways, like any typical morning, I got up, was getting ready, went out into kind of the common area and was making myself a bowl of cereal when all of a sudden from behind me I hear Happy Chinese New Year. So I flip around and there are 8 exchange students staring at me like mid-bite into bowls of dumplings. No joke, they had made it all. And I'm sitting there with a bowl of Cocoa Puffs completely confused. My TV, which was like, you know what I mean if I say fatback TV, like it's not your normal, or not what today's like HD TVs are, because an HD TV was in its place. It was a 20-inch fatback TV had been replaced by this 56-inch HD TV, which was completely state-of-the-art at the moment, was somehow in our dorm room, and they had rigged it up to like start playing a Chinese game show. And so I'm confused. They're confused because they're looking at me, not sure what to do. And I was just like, okay, Happy Chinese New Year. So, needless to say, I had an interesting experience my freshman year, living with someone from a different culture. And I tell you this story, and of course I run off to church and I tell everybody, oh my gosh, there was a Chinese New Year party in my place. I come back, there's no sign it even happened. Like the TV was gone. My old one, sadly, was back in its place, and it was almost like the whole thing didn't even happen. But I tell you this story because I never thought anything would have ever become of living with that guy for a year. I thought it was just going to be, we're good friends for that year and we kind of go separate ways and that's it. But this is one story that I think not many people know about my journey, and it's pretty cool. So I'll circle back to it, but that's the purpose of this chapter. The purpose of this chapter is to tell you the stories that you don't know, the stories that I have with me that people don't know about my journey. So I'm looking at this thing right here. This was actually from a mission trip that my home church went on. So going back when I was in high school, sophomore year, just before I was diagnosed, there was a mission trip, as you can see right there, that went to Jamaica. And they brought that back for me after they went, and that was when I was undergoing treatment and stuff like that. So yes, everybody knows that sophomore year of high school, I got cancer. They know I got Hodgkin's lymphoma, but what no one knows is that the week after my initial surgery, had it all gone well, I was supposed to be on that mission trip. In the months leading up to it, and this is before we had discovered anything about this cluster of bumps on my neck, we would have several meetings at the church where we would write our testimony, and kind of as a way to practice for when in the spring when we actually did go, we would be ready to, tell people about Jesus and everything like that. And in my mind at the time, I thought that, faith is one of those things where you have this one life-changing event, and then all of a sudden you're on the right path. But it was like, I don't really have that life-changing event yet in my life. And I thought, this trip to Jamaica was going to be it. We're going to have an opportunity to go in and help out with a few doctors and whatnot. And I was like, well, perfect. So, I wrote my testimony, or what I thought it was, and was practicing it, down to every word, every sentence. I grew up in a good old Christian home and went to Bible study and did all these things. And then cancer happened. So I tell you all this because, like I said, I was at a point where I said, one event's going to change my life. One event's going to get me on track. And I know for a fact that it's going to be this mission trip. It's going to be going somewhere else. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure on, kids growing up in youth group and kids going to college and being part of college church groups, that there's this pressure that to feel valuable with your story and with your faith, you have to go somewhere else, go overseas to serve. Because after all, those are the stories we take notice of, right? Those are the stories that we remember most. And if there's anything God showed me, it's that, why do you have to go somewhere else to do ministry? 100% of the time, your ministry is right in front of you. It is in where you are right now. It may be for yourself. It may be for someone else. But your ministry is always in front of you, where you are right now. And yes, going somewhere else is a great opportunity, but it shouldn't be the end-all, be-all. I'll worry about ministry once I get there. Again, this is a simple message for someone who's been in church. Just simple. But it has all that more of an impact now that I've lived it. My ministry my event wasn't to go somewhere else. It wasn't to go to Jamaica and, impact people there. Because I was an immature 16-year-old at the time, let's be real. My moment may be this, but honestly, it started when I went to college. It wasn't even, I mentioned this I may have mentioned this or not, but when I went through cancer, it wasn't for me. It was for my family. That was my family's moment to get on track. For me, that moment came in college, and I'll talk about that soon. But yeah, a lot of pressure is put on. Rather than worrying about where we are now, let's see what cool trip we can plan to spread the gospel. Which again, evangelism is great, but evangelism isn't something that just happens abroad. It happens at home too. That's something I had to find out. So that's one story. That's the story of Jamaica. The next story is the Yankees story. And to this day, I still cannot believe it happened. So this is the summer that I was undergoing chemo. I was still bald-headed. And our family went to go watch the Braves and the Yankees in Atlanta for 2 games. And then we stayed for a Red Sox-Braves game the next day. Now, growing up in the household I was in, sports were a huge part of who we were as a family. My relatives are from New York and Pennsylvania, and so naturally we're Yankees fans, and we're not bandwagon fans, so take that. So we had planned to go see this series, and again, I was still bald-headed, We go to Atlanta, and the second day we're there, it's myself, my brother, and my dad. And we're playing golf earlier in the day, and my dad gets a phone call. And that's where everything changed. Well, I knew I would have to do one of these videos eventually, so before I go on with my story, I want to go back and clarify a few things.